Wilderness Innovation Radio. This is Perry Peacock with Wilderness Innovation, and this subject of this podcast today is the Lake Mountain solo desert trek that I did a couple of weeks ago here. And so I want to talk about some of the details of that and tell you, some of the more interesting things or things that I learned or that sort of thing, and kind of go over that. And with me here today is my partner Ben, and so we're gonna just kind of talk back and forth, and he's got some questions and stuff he wants to ask to kind of get some information out there about the trek.
Definitely. So like you mentioned, this podcast will be on your Lake Mountain solo desert trek. And we've just got a few questions, kind of pick your brain about the trek and maybe some things that you learned and etc. And we'll go ahead and start by the idea behind doing a trek like this. What would possess you to take on a mountain this size in the middle of the desert? It's really hot, and you're going to have to pack in your water since there's no water sources along the way. So what gave you the idea to do this particular trek?
Well, mostly because I've always been told that I had mental problems. And all the years I lived in the South, anybody that's from the Southeast U.S. would know this one. Most people told me, Perry, you ain't right. That's probably the main reason. I don't know. One day I was just driving along and looking over there at the mountain, and I thought, wonder what it'd be like to hike end to end, like all the way from the start of the mountain up over the top and down the other side, and hike all the way on the ridge line, so you're all the way on the tops of it. And I thought at first it kind of intrigued me, and then I started thinking about it. I thought, well, yeah, there's no water up there. We are in, I thought, well, it's going to be August when I do it, so it's probably going to be hot. And I'm not in the best shape right now because I haven't been exercising or anything. So, I don't know, I just thought it'd be fun to see. I think really in the end was kind of what if the average guy, we don't think about this nowadays, we all have our cars and all that stuff, but I thought, what if the average guy had to navigate over a mountain range or something to get say you'd have to bug out somewhere, and your only choice is to walk. So I thought, well, that's kind of a good scenario because, we got the Spy Center just right near my house. So what happens if they bomb it or something?
Absolutely.
Because I shouldn't say the word bomb on here. But what if you had to bug out for some reason and you've got to retreat over the mountains to the other side to be safe, Thought, could somebody that's, hasn't really exercised a whole bunch and just kind of the average Joe, can they undertake something like that and do it? I think that's kind of what I wound up thinking was, I wonder if I can. I always thought I could, but I just thought, I don't know how hard it's going to be.
So why did you choose to do it in the month of August? Right now, I mean, it's hot. It's hot, it's dry. Why now?
Well, I thought spring and fall would be easier weather-wise, more moderate temperatures and stuff like that, and possibly even some rain. I mean, you might even be able to catch some water and stuff. Thought really the worst two times to do that would be like January or February or August or something like that. So I thought, well, let's try it in August and just see, because I knew there wasn't any water sources up on top. I mean, I think there's some springs at various places down lower on the mountain, but when you're doing a ridge line, there's nothing. I mean, everything's below you. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to take all my own water, and that would be a challenge because, I started off with 24 pounds of water.
So what's the scope of the trek for you before you get going? What do you have envisioned as to what you're going to be doing on this trek?
Primarily, I wanted to try to, I really wanted to make it simple. So I didn't want to demand that I do too much stuff other than go from the very southern tip of the mountain up over the ridge to the very northern tip, and I just wanted to see what it would be like, knowing that it's going to be hot and hot wind, and from what I could tell, very little if any shade, so you're exposed to the sun all day long, and so it was really a lot of it was just about challenging myself. I think, just as an average, just as an average guy, can I do it?
Now let's jump into preparation for the trek. Just some things that you may have done in preparation for the hike. Did you in advance do any recon work?
Um, Mainly, what I did was on the very north end where the communication towers are. I, uh, there's a communications road up there, so I did drive up there and kind of looked at and that's really well, actually, that's kind of the center part because there's there's really no trails virtually on the north end, and there's very little of anything on the south end either. It's just the middle where all the communication and microwave towers are. But so I drove up into there and I saw that area, and I did go up into there a week or two before, and I think it was a week before, and I cached some water right up there just in case. I thought, well, what if I get up here and I really need more water than I have, or what if one of my water things, canteens or something, springs a leak, and because one of them's 96 ounces. If that thing got a leak, I'd be in trouble because I need all the water I'm taking. So
Absolutely. Like you had mentioned, and also in your video, you do show the first part of your trek video. You show yourself retrieving the water that you had cached. How did that come about? Why did you decide to go up there and cache water?
well, I did, yeah. Mostly just like I say, just mostly as a precaution. I thought I wouldn't need it. To be honest with you, I thought 3 gallons of water would do it for me, and I just thought, well, just in case something happens, I'd rather have too much. I'd rather have it there and not need it. So yeah, and as far as some other recon work goes, one thing I didn't mention, it is a little bit in the video, but I did go on National Geographic topo, which I had, and I basically used the mouse and kind of clicked out my path along the ridge line there, and then I was able. You can go in there, and I had some settings, so I kind of flew it software wise, like you're flying the route. So I flew it a number of times there, and then I went into Google Earth and did the same thing, where Google Earth has your real scenery in there. So it kind of got me acquainted with the route as much as possible. Although I have to say it was a lot different up there than what it looked like.
Absolutely. So by doing that, though, did it give you an idea of the elevation you're going to have to climb, like what elevation that Lake Mountain is, and also the length of the trek, how long, mileage-wise?
Yeah, I knew I was going to be somewhere around 14 or 15 miles or so, somewhere in there. And yeah, and it did. One thing in the National Geographic model is I was able to do a side silhouette view where it kind of shows everything and shows you kind of what angles you're climbing and stuff. And so I knew it's going to be all uphill to the top, and then level for about a mile on the top, and then it's all downhill after that. So
Nice.
so the two extremes. But
So other than the online maps, did you have any other maps with you that you use along the trek?
I didn't. It would have been good to probably.
Did you have any type of navigation device, or you kind of just had in mind where you were going? And
I did have my GPS,
okay,
but it's one of the older ones, so the screen on it's pretty small. So that's mostly I can record stuff, but as far as going in there and viewing a map on there, it's pretty well pointless. So yeah, and I didn't. I probably should. I'll get into it in a little bit here. We start talking about each day, but it would have been nice to have had a little bit of some maps though. I wasn't so worried about it because this mountain sits to the west of Utah Lake, and then and then it's just farms and the city of Eagle Mountain on the other side. So I'm like, it's not like I'm gonna get where I have no idea where I'm at.
Yeah, you've got some pretty good landmarks. Um, did you do anything in preparation for this hike as far as physical activities, prep hikes, anything else to get yourself in shape?
No, I didn't.
It's the short of it.
I planned on it, and then we got busy with all the work we had to do and just, I don't know, family stuff and everything. I just wound up, well, I guess it's gonna be just flat out just going on it.
Yeah.
The only thing I did to get prepped for was I had a little bit of colon surgery a couple weeks before. That's
Don't
my
know if
only,
that's much help.
that's my only preparation.
Why did you choose to go this alone? Why do a solo trek?
Because you couldn't go with me.
That's touche. That's a good point.
Well, I have to say, probably a lot of my life, a lot of the things I've done solo, just because either I can't find somebody to go to it with me, or I do it last minute, or for whatever reason. A lot of times, like my winter time stuff, a lot of time if it's a blizzard, I want to camp out in it. And a lot of people don't really care to do that, so I kind of got used to some of that over the years. But I really, it would have been nice to have somebody like yourself with me. But then on the other hand, I thought, well, I kind of looked at it on the other side. When I go alone, it's kind of like it's me against myself, or me against the elements here. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't have somebody else to encourage me along or whatever, bounce things off of, or even to talk to. I mean, you're up there. It's other than the wind whistling in your ears all day long, the hot wind like a furnace. Other than that, I mean, you're there. It's just you. And up there, it's desolate. There's virtually no animals. There's hardly anything up there. I mean, so it's kind of, you got a lot of time to think. So it's kind of, I think in that way, I learned a lot from that.
Definitely, especially along the ridge line. Like you said, a little bit lower, you might have some contact with animals and maybe some other things. But when you're walking the ridge line, it's a different story. There's not much up there to accompany you along. Let's go ahead and jump into your trek. So this started on Thursday afternoon, right? A couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I started on Thursday afternoon. I worked here at the shop at Wilderness Innovation, and then afterwards I had my wife drive me out to the south end of the mountain, or right at the very end of it, and then she dropped me off there and threw my pack on and took off.
So what's the time frame that you got dropped off?
I was dropped off about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 3:30, 4 o'clock.
You still had some good hours
Yeah.
to get started. So talk about what you did from there and the first leg of your trip for the remainder of the day.
All right, so I had my wife Shauna drop me off down there, and I actually wound up not getting dropped off really where I knew I should have been, because she was getting a little nervous because we had no cell phone service out there. It's just a lonely dirt road, and she was worried about if she dropped me off and then the car broke down or something like that, she wouldn't be able to get a hold of anybody.
Oh, shoot.
And really nobody knew where we were at. So, and I started to worry about that too. I thought, really, I think I needed to be over about another 1.5 miles to catch the trail and the road where I wanted to catch it. But I just decided, well, I'll just let her drop me off at this one point, and I'll just make it up there,
Nice.
which proved to be a little more difficult. So I wound up basically having to go over 2 mountains. Not huge mountains, but still, pretty decent size, and with all the loose rock and the gravel, and they were all west-facing slopes in the afternoon, so the sun was rather intense, as it was rather exhausting. So getting up and over those guys to get close to where I could catch the trail I needed to get was much more difficult than I originally planned. In fact, really Thursday Thursday night, by the time I was finding a place to hang my hammock, I was like, I wasn't even going to go through the trek. I was like,
Oh man.
I think I'm just going to do something around on the southern end, and I'll wind up down on the road where I got cell phone. I'll call her to come and get me. Because I thought that was one thing where if I'd had a map or something would have been a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wasn't positive that I was getting to the right point of where I needed to catch my trail. And so I was kind of, when I went to bed Thursday night, I was afraid I still had a lot of ground to make up to catch the trail. So I was a little discouraged about that at that point. I used a lot of energy I hadn't planned on using. You know, basically bushwhacking through the thick sagebrush, cutting cross country to try to get there. But anyway, in the end of towards the end of the day Thursday, I thought I saw part of the ATV trail up ahead. So I think there's a couple of turns in there that I remembered from flying the route on Google Earth. I thought that looks like a couple switchbacks. The formation of the switchbacks looked just exactly like it looked on Google Earth, and I thought I think I know where I'm at now. And so I kind of thought that I was, but then I was like, well, I don't know. That could really happen anywhere possibly. So I didn't really know, and I actually had to hike till about close to 10 o'clock Thursday night before I got into any junipers and stuff where I could throw my hammock up. I was almost just going to throw down in the sagebrush and just go, but I saw some junipers way up ahead, so I had to crest another mountain up there, and when I got up near the top of that, so I ran into them, so that's where I camped. And for dinner that night, all I did was had a can of Kippard snacks. Then I was getting a little tired, so I sat on the side of the mountain, popped them open, and ate them up.
I bet they tasted good too.
They did. Didn't have to cook them. I didn't have to do. And I thought, well, it's fish. That's good protein and everything. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So that was basically what I had to eat that night. So it was just drinking water, eating trail mix, and having Kippard snacks. That was my deal. And when I set up camp that night, I didn't start a fire. I didn't even get the stove out and cook anything. I just basically went to bed.
So at this point in the trek, when you set up camp Thursday night, you weren't even on the mountain you were anticipating to do the trek on quite yet.
Yeah, I wasn't quite there yet.
So you've gone quite a ways already, and you hadn't even hit the bottom of the mountain that you're looking to traverse.
Yeah, so that's why I was a little bummed out, because I was like, I expended a lot of I mean, it would have been some energy anyway, but a lot of extra time and energy because of where I got dropped off. That was a lot of extra I hadn't planned on, and I actually went through a lot of water. I went through as much water Thursday afternoon as I went through on Friday.
Wow.
But it was the sun at that time, and I was on the west mountain slope.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just eating me up. And, normally, of course, we would teach people that in that situation, you just rest and wait till the sun starts going down, cooling down, and then you go. But the nature of my trek was I have to go during the day all day. So that I kind of threw myself an extra curveball. If I was in a situation where I just couldn't hack it or whatever, I could have slept all day and hiked in the morning and evenings, But part of what I wanted to do is push myself through the daytime and see what I could do.
So walk us through your sleeping gear that you're using for the trip. Thursday night, you said you have your hammock. Did you have a sleeping bag? What did you use to keep warm, and any other? Or did you have a tarp or anything else that you might have used to set up camp?
Yeah, I took the PSTL, or PSSL, the long poncho and multicam. So that's what I had. I strung that up as my hammock, and I just hacked a few extra branches out of between two juniper trees and tied the thing up there. And I did take the small version or small tarp, the 5x5 with me. Wasn't anticipating any rain. It would marginally get me by, but I really didn't take anything extra at all with me because I had to take so much water. So And then I took the fleece liner that goes with the poncho with me, and I
Okay.
used that as my sleeping bag. And now some people, if you're not acquainted with some of the high deserts of the West, you'd think, hey, well, you're knocking on 100 degrees and wind like out of a furnace and stuff like that. You wouldn't need anything. But out here on the high desert, a lot of it could be 100 in a day, and it this time of year it wouldn't get quite as cold. But I mean, it's potential to get down in the 40s or 50s at night.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, you do still have to think about something to keep warm at night. So
Especially on the ridge line
yeah,
of a
yeah,
mountain.
because I'm on the ridge, so I'm like the whole trip hardly ever not in the gusting wind. But anyway, so that's how I slept, and I slept comfortable, and you know it was pretty nice. The hammock is like that's a godsend. It's so easy to put up, and 5 minutes you can be in there and sleeping. So that's what I was doing.
Okay. So that takes care of Thursday. So walk us through Friday. What did you do when you woke up? What did you do for breakfast, and maybe some highlights from the day.
All right. Yeah. So Friday actually started out good because when I woke up in the morning and got out of the hammock and kind of walked around a little bit. When I got to the place where I camped, it was dark, of course, so I
Mm-hmm.
really couldn't see anything. But early in the morning there, I looked straight north of me and I could see way off in the distance, I could see the southmost microwave tower on the mountain. So that kind of gave me hope because I thought, well, because the mountains are a little bit wide, you can wind up kind of in the front range, and then I'd wind up totally in the wrong spot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I was worried about when I went to bed Thursday night. When I got up Friday morning and I saw where I was at, I was like, okay. And then I could for sure see where I would catch the ATV trail. And so I was like, okay, don't feel so bad now.
Definitely.
So, but I don't know, I didn't really feel like eating breakfast. I don't know, I was starting to kind of not feel the best, I guess, a little bit. But, I drank so much water the night, the evening before and everything. Like, oh, wow. But anyway, so I just munched on a few carrots and I got out my trail mix and just munched on some of that and decided, well, I better get hiking to get as far as I can before it gets blazing hot again. So basically, I just kind of packed up camp and I shot a little bit of video to kind of show people, my camp and a little bit about that. But other than that, I got started as soon as I could and hit the trail to get started on Friday.
Now, part of the way through Friday, um, you ended up getting sick on the trek. Explain a little bit about that and how you had to deal with it moving forward.
Yeah, I got on the trail after it was after I ran into the rattlesnake.
Uh
That was on the, if you watch the video, that was on part one of the video, and that was the only time I cut off the trail, kind of did a shortcut because it actually went out way out to this knoll that overlooked Utah Lake and then cut back. It's like I got like 3 football fields of space in between a half a mile of trail.
huh.
So I'm like, yeah, I'm going straight through. That's why I ran into the rattlesnake.
Nice.
But after that, then I went through a couple of hills and stuff, and I started feeling tired as the afternoon came into being, and it was just so darn hot, and just every so often you'd have a few junipers for shade, but other than that, the sun's just bearing down on you, the hot wind just blowing on you constantly. And I was going up a hill, and I thought, well, I'll get to the top of the hill and I'll start looking for where I can rest and maybe grab some lunch or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I come upon a grove of 3 huge juniper trees about halfway up the hill, and I was going to stop there, and I thought, no, I need to get to the top of the hill. I'm always pushing myself, got to get to the top of the hill. And I just decided, I think I'll stop right here. And so I stopped there, and because I could see there's no trees at the top, so I'm like, well, if there's no shade up there, I might as well take it where I can get it. So I stopped there, and Then when I kind of laid down to rest for just 5 or 10 minutes, and I thought I'd heat me up a little something for lunch. And I had started getting, about that time I started getting some severe pains in my abdomen and down around where I had my little surgery thing. And so it really started feeling bad. In fact, I got into as much pain as starting to feel like kidney stone type pain,
Oh,
really
wow.
severe. And I thought, wow, this is crazy, you know. It even got to the point where I thought I was gonna vomit because the pain was so bad. I was like I was gonna lose my stomach. So I was like, man, I don't know what I do. And I'm like, I didn't at that point. How do I have? I don't have communication. I don't know how to tell somebody to get to where I'm at. So I'm like, dang, this is not good. But I don't know. I basically, to be honest with you, I couldn't get comfortable at all. I thought, and I had some internal bleeding. I was getting some blood in my urine, and I'm like, oh, this is not good.
That is not a good sign.
So I laid back down for a little bit, and then I honestly, I said a prayer, and I'm like, I don't know, I got to get through this, you know. And a little bit later, I started feeling a little bit better, and I felt like I should have some ramen noodles, and I cooked it up with extra liquid and everything. And I ate that down, drank some extra liquid and all that, and I just kind of rested for a little bit, and I started feeling better and everything. And so then I put my pack on and headed up the trail again. And really after that, it was amazing. The climbs up all the hills were easier. Like before I was struggling up some of them, like, oh man, and just like, oh, I get to get top of another hill, and after that I just see them. It's like I just go up them. I mean, it seemed like I had more stamina and everything. I don't know, I was going along a lot better. So, yes, I got through that. I was kind of concerned about that. I thought it would have been good if I had one of those spot units or something, so I could send a message like, "Here's where I am. Come and get me." But I got through it, and it didn't bother me through the rest of the trip.
So you hit your next camp, Quickie Camp, at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And you had actually considered pushing through to the end of your trek at that point. Why did you get that feeling, and are you glad that you didn't and that you just stayed put for the night right there?
Yeah, I got to thinking. I thought, you know, it's only 4 o'clock, and I'm at the highest altitude already. So I thought, why not just head down? And thought maybe I'd get down at 10 or 11 o'clock at night or something, you know.
Uh-huh.
And then I thought, you know, to be honest, I thought, well, I'm up here in the mountains, and I'm finding the only place on the mountain that's actually nice. Because there's some quakies and there's actually some green grass and everything, and I'm like, yeah, I should just camp here. So, and actually when I got in there, and I was like, I saw 2 trees, and I thought my hammock could go really nice there. so I started thinking, well, you know, I'd at least take a nap. so I strung up the hammock, put the small tarp over it to shade me from the afternoon sun, and I slept for a couple hours.
Nice.
It was too late to go down after that. And it's
kind of lose your motivation.
And it's a good thing I didn't, because I never would have made it. And it might have even been hazardous in some spots. There's some pretty steep, almost cliff-like spots with lots of loose rocks and stuff on the way down. And that wouldn't have been good to try to navigate that in the dark.
Definitely not.
So, not that I would have. I probably would have tried to stop somewhere, but it wouldn't have been a pleasant place to stop anyway there. So I'm glad I just stayed put.
Now, you mentioned that you're on the top of this mountain. You're on the ridgeline still. You've basically peaked out. How are you feeling at this point? I mean, earlier in the day, like you said, you weren't feeling so good with your abdomen and some other things going that way. But at this point, you said you're feeling a little bit better. Now you're at camp. Are you physically just exhausted completely, or?
I was tired, but I really didn't feel too bad. Actually, actually, it was kind of a surprise before I got to the camp. Was like the Quakey camp is right north of the southmost microwave tower on the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually the tower I'd been seeing all along, working my way towards it. I'm like, well, I know what's right by there, that Quakey camp. So I was just hiking along up the mountain. I came over this knoll, and all of a sudden it was like right there close. And it was
Nice.
kind of surprised me. I was like, what the heck? I thought that was farther away, and it actually gave me a little adrenaline rush because I'm like, wow, I'm actually here. And I knew at that point I'm at the top, so it's just hiking about a mile or mile and a half across the flat top before I go down. And I thought, well, I've made all my altitude.
That was a good feeling.
And then I knew the Quakey camp was there. I could go lay down for a little bit if I wanted or whatever, a nice comfortable spot. So yeah, I mean, that I surprisingly wasn't that tired or didn't feel that bad. And that's why I was considering, well, gosh, why don't I just go on down and finish it out today?
Sure.
So I actually felt that good. But I think I was a little bit deceived by that because I really wasn't that, I really didn't have that much energy.
So, what did you do for dinner? Did you have a substantial dinner at all? Did you kind of do what you did the day before?
For dinner, I had some ramen noodles, and like I say, the food on this is totally boring because I literally I took as little food and other stuff as I could because I was carrying so much water. I was like, so I started out with a 50-pound pack, then I had to gain 3,800 feet of altitude, and so I was like, so I just took stuff like ramen noodles, really light, simple, and nothing fancy. But so that's what I had for dinner, and then I had two 24-ounce mugs of hot chocolate.
Nice.
So
Get some
I
fluids
tanked
back
up in there, got some fluid in it. It tasted good because I'd just been drinking straight water all the time, so it kind of felt good to have some flavored water.
Definitely. So let's jump into Saturday. That was also another full day of hiking. And Saturday more or less was the downhill part of the trek.
Yeah.
So you would think it'd be an easier part of the trek. The easier leg of the trek. You're going downhill. You've maxed your elevation, and now it's downhill. But it ended up being the toughest for you. Explain why that is.
Well, yeah, Saturday I really didn't know what to anticipate because there's really virtually no trails down the mountain on that end of it.
Mm-hmm.
So prior, although it was a pretty rugged trail, I was following a ATV trail. So going down that, and plus there'd been a big fire the year before and some fires in previous years, and it made a lot of the loose rock that's on the mountain even looser due to the weather and rains that had happened earlier. So it was kind of slippery, and the stones were kind of sliding around on you under your feet, and pretty steep in a lot of places. And there was virtually only like I think 2 trees all the way down that gave me any shade. And one of them was a tree that had been burned by the fire. The juniper, it still had all of its leaf type growth on it,
Uh-huh.
but it was all brown. But it was shade.
Yeah, that's something.
So that was one of my resting spots. Then there was one green tree, and other than that, I mean, we're talking just nothing. And so it was, and then in areas where the ground was, where a lot of trees were at, where it burned, the ground was more blackened,
Mm-hmm.
and that just you could feel the heat like coming off of an asphalt parking lot. So you had a hot wind, the ground was hot, reflecting heat into you, and the sun beating down on you. So all that combination, I mean, it was just hot, just plain out hot.
So speaking of that, you had done something with a washcloth to help keep you cool. Kind of go over that. You hear a lot of people say pack a bandana, and if you can drench it and use that to help stay cool. But you actually used a washcloth, and kind of explain why that worked better in your estimation.
Well, basically, I was desperate by then. That was towards the end of the day on the trek, and like a bandana is pretty thin,
Uh-huh.
and you'd wet that sort of thing, and like in 5 minutes it'd be dry. So it's like, oh my gosh, this is insane.
Well, and that water's valuable. You're
Yeah,
packing it. You only have so
yeah,
much.
yeah,
It's not like you're dipping it in a creek.
yeah. I didn't. Yeah, it's not like some pond I could stop by and refill. But I don't know. I just had a thought. I thought, well, let me try my fate, 'cause I'd like to take a face cloth with me.
Uh-huh.
So I just got. There's the picture on the video. I looked pretty stupid, but it worked really well. I just poured some, watered it up, and poured water into it. Took off my cowboy hat and just put it on my head, and then draped it down the west, well, my left side, which was facing the west sun,
Uh-huh.
and that faced the direct. All the wind was coming from the west as well. So I just draped it down that side of my head, and it hung down on my shoulder and my neck. Put my hat back on to hold it in place, and I swear, man, it was like air conditioning.
Nice.
It actually sometimes it felt cold, but I could go 45 minutes to an hour, and without that thing drying out.
That's awesome.
So I mean, it was a blue face cloth, which doesn't match any of my coyote gear.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I would pack something like that maybe if I want to be fashion conscious in a brown color or something,
There
but
you go.
tan or something. But that, I'll tell you what, that really, it's like a swamp cooler that you use in the drier climates like out here. I mean, it was amazing. That I couldn't believe the amount of difference that made.
So, here's the big question: would you ever do this same trek again?
Well, that's a funny question. when I when I got off the mountain and I got a hold of Shauna to come and get me and try to tell her where I was going to wind up at the end of there, I said to myself, well, I'm really glad I did it, but I'll never do that again. and then last Sunday, Sean and I were driving around in the afternoon, and I was eyeballing West Mountain, which is the same kind of mountain situation, only just farther south of there. She said, "I thought you said you weren't going to do this again." I'm like, "Well, that's a different mountain, Maybe it'd be." So I'm sitting
Nice.
there, we're driving by it, and I'm just looking at it, thinking, well, if I started the south, I could make a camp right there, and I could. So I'll probably do something like that again sometime.
Very good.
I don't learn my lessons very well.
Speaking of lessons, what are some takeaway lessons that you got from this trek, or any advice that you have from your experience?
One thing is, like I said, I took 3 gallons of water, and I needed 4.
Mm-hmm.
So luckily, I had cached that water up at Quakey Camp the week prior, and I needed virtually. I probably had 4 or 5 ounces of water left at the end of the
Wow.
day Saturday out of 4 gallons of water. So it's amazing with the strength of the wind and how hot it was. It dried you out just incredibly fast. And you're on the ridge line, so there's nothing to block any wind. So you're just standing out there giving up moisture constantly. So I mean, one thing I learned is I wouldn't take any less water than that. I'm glad I took what I did.
Absolutely.
The other thing I ran into was I just took straight water, and I found even a little bit Friday afternoon. I was kind of tired of drinking water, but I knew I had to drink it. I was kind of monitoring my urine and stuff just to kind of make sure I wasn't getting too dehydrated or something. So
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was drinking. I was drinking as much as I need to. I couldn't drink less. And Saturday, even drinking all that I could, I was even actually still kind of getting dehydrated. I was getting a little more dehydrated drinking as much as I was.
Wow.
So that's how much I was losing to the environment. It's incredible. But the one thing I found is I was getting sick of drinking water.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I got to the point where I'd almost puke thinking I got to drink some more water. It's like I was so sick of water, I just had to force myself to drink it. And So one thing, I mean, one of the first things I did when I got back is start looking into some of the little, water mixtures, electrolyte mixes and stuff like that. I'm really not a big fan of that, like drinking a lot of that, especially I wouldn't want to mix up 3 gallons of that or something. But I thought, well, it would be good to have like a 20. I started thinking if I was to do this again,
Yeah.
or something similar, I'd carry like a 20-ounce bottle on a carabiner hanging off one of my D rings on my shoulder strap on my pack, and then I drink most of my water out of my water bladder in my pack, but every so often take some of this flavored water.
Sure.
Because I think that's what I needed was a little bit of change up in flavor. I'm normally pretty good at just drinking plain water. I really like it. But that was just 4 gallons in that short a time was just sickening.
Definitely.
So that's one thing that I will. That's one thing I'll be looking into is some of that. And I've been trying a few things since there and trying to see something that I would like to use.
Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about goal setting. A lot of people, when they map out a trek or a hike or anything, they'll usually set some goals. If it's a multi-day trip, where they want to be at what time, have kind of a set schedule. But you had actually mentioned that you had made better progress not setting any goals. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the Thursday night, of course, I was really pushing hard to try to get into where my trail was and stuff, but I was going up and down those mountains, and I was like this, I was bushwhacking really a lot of the way.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just exhausting, and I'd tell myself, I'd look up at the mountain at a rock or a piece of sage, particular sagebrush or the carcass of a dead rabbit or something.
Sure.
It's like my goal is I'm going to get to there and then I'll stop and I'll pause and rest. And at that point I'm carrying virtually all the weight, all the water, and so I would stop. I didn't want to sit down, get that comfortable. I just wanted to stop for 30 seconds or a minute or something. I'd stop and bend over at my waist to take the weight of my pack off of my shoulders while I rested, and then I'd stand up and go on. But I don't know. I was always of the mindset that I'd look up the trail and set a goal. Where you got a hard uphill to do. You're setting a goal. Okay, I'm going to not stop till I get to that point. But I found myself always exhausted by the time I got there, and I think part of that seems it's kind of contrary. You always think setting a goal would be best, but
Mm-hmm.
seems like the anxiety was starting to get to me as you'd get close to it. Then your mind would start saying, I don't know if you can make it to there. I don't know if you can make it. You'd have to say, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. So I had this battle going all the time, getting to that next point. So I'm not a marathoner. Those guys would probably just run through it all.
Yeah.
But I found on Friday afternoon when I took off again from when I got sick, I basically just took off from there. I didn't set another goal, and I just walked the trail.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like I was going up, and I was climbing as much, if not more, than I'd already done. And it seemed like I just kept finding myself at the top of the hill. And then, since I'm ridgeline, you're top and then you're down, top and down. I mean, you're up and down
Yeah.
when you do a ridgeline type trek. But it just seemed like it really wasn't a big issue. I just kept on walking, and I made better time. I didn't stop as much. I wasn't as tired.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe my mind was kind of exhausting me because I kept setting those goals. I mean, it seems so contrary. Don't set a goal. But I mean, overall, I had where I wanted to get to by the end of the day or something. But
Okay.
but those little interim things, I think they're wearing me out.
Water was obviously a huge factor on this trip. You took 3 gallons. You ended up needing a fourth gallon, and it was a lot to guzzle 4 gallons of water in a matter of a couple of days. We had talked before you left on the, actually right when you got back from the trek, that you were going to take some hard candies with you, and had forgotten them at the house or wherever they were, to help keep your mouth wet. Do you think that would be something that would be beneficial to have on the trek after having done it, with the thought of taking the candies with you?
Yeah, Yeah, that would have been good because, I mean, you take 2 or 3 breaths and your mouth is just dry because the air's so
Hmm.
dry and the wind blowing so hard. I mean, it's just literally. I mean, you could just feel yourself drying out, and and I would have it would have felt better. You know, maybe part of my problem might have been I was sipping water so much just to keep my mouth moist. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I still would have needed to drink the same amount of water, but might be the frequency might have also bothered me and might have made me kind of sick of the water because I was always sipping on it. So, yeah, normally that would have been nice to have some hard candy with me. I normally do. I normally have a little Ziploc baggie full of it, and I don't know, it just didn't get in there. But
Um, did you learn anything about yourself on this trek? And if so, what?
well, I learned I could do it.
Well, you're alive,
Yeah, I did. I
so you
made
made it.
it. uh, yeah, there's a lot of when you're especially there by yourself. All the time you're hiking, every step you take, everything you do, all you've got your own thoughts and everything. So
Hmm.
it does give you a lot of time to think and everything. And actually, even though it was really hard to do, I mean, for me, I know somebody who does these, trail running things or whatever, the mountain type, uh, sport type things,
Uh-huh.
they could blaze through something like that. But I just want to consider it, me as especially my condition at this point is just an everyday guy, just your normal guy. Can I do it and make it through all this and everything? I mean, I was never worried about anything. I mean, it could always shortcut it somewhere and go down, but it's like just trying to go through my original plan from start to finish and stay with it. So I mean, I knew I found out I could do it, even though it was difficult because I put myself in some extreme conditions kind of on purpose.
Right.
I didn't realize how severe that was going to be till I was in the middle of it. And especially coming down Saturday where really I got to the point there really wasn't any shorter way down. There was no better way down than the way I was coming, and I just had to deal with it. And I just had to keep, I just one like I said in the video a lot of times, left foot, right foot, one step in front of the other,
Yeah.
and you just had to keep on going and stuff. But and I learned to enjoy a lot of things, some of the things I saw and some of that. So, but I don't know. All in all, like I say, now it's been a couple weeks since I did it, and I wouldn't be opposed to doing it again sometime. So I
Definitely.
guess so I guess I would go. There's some things that I would just do a little differently, but it would be kind of fun now. I'm like it'd be kind of fun to do it again to see. Not learning what I've learned, could I do it now? Would it be easier and better?
Are there ways that you underestimated the trek? And if so, what would you do now, knowing what you know now, having done the trek, to maybe improve the experience if you were to do something like this in the future?
Well, I knew my biggest concern was actually the altitude gain,
Mm-hmm.
because where I'd been hiking in the past, some with my sons and that, they're all quite a bit younger than me, and and they actually exercise a lot. I do it sporadically here and there, and the thing I was worried the most about was the altitude gain, and hoping because I knew, and especially doing the ridge line, I knew even on the way down you're having to go uphill because even though you're losing altitude, you're still going down and then coming up a couple hundred feet and going down a few hundred feet and coming up 100 feet, all that. But yeah, I did. I tried to. That's why I tried to fly it as much as I could on Google Earth and National Geographic Topo, because I was trying to get as much of a feel for it realistically as I could. But it's still nothing like actually doing
Definitely not.
it. There's a lot more there than you think.
Now, we'd already talked. You didn't really eat too many meals on the trip, and what you did was pretty basic foods: the trail mix, the the kippered snacks, things of that nature, sunflower seeds, maybe some fruits and vegetables. Um, was that planned? Did you want to go with minimal food, or I mean, I know water obviously took up a huge majority of your pack and weight wise, but was there a reason behind the minimal food on the trail?
Yeah, I actually probably wound up taking more food than I was originally going
Really?
to. Yeah. Well, I did have our one man cook set with me,
Uh huh.
so I did potentially have a few days worth of basic meals in there
Okay.
if I cooked those up. Some whole grain cereal, which I had some of that Saturday morning, 9 grain cereal, and then I did have a couple of things of some different rices and stuff like that, and some beans. But I didn't use them. To be honest with you, I really wasn't very hungry. I think I was so sick of drinking water that I kind of actually had to make myself eat dinner on Friday night. And Saturday morning, I really didn't want to eat breakfast, but
Hmm.
I knew I needed to, so I kind of made myself. It actually tasted good. I mean, I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
but but I think I kind of anticipated it was going to be a tough thing just because of the circumstances I was going to be under. And I was trying to do it also as kind of a deal like, say you had to bug out somewhere and your only way out is that you have to go over these mountains to get to safety or to get to where you needed to get, and maybe you couldn't take much with you. So I was like, well, if all I can take is water, that was my main thing, water and some stuff to snack on, really. So yeah, I did kind of on the purpose punish myself that way.
We had talked. You didn't build an open fire on the trek, so
Right.
your means of boiling your water for your noodles or for your drinks. What was that? And I know you had the Firebox Nano. I know you had the Trangia burner. Was that your main way of cooking up your food? And if so, how did that perform along the way?
Yeah, I figured I probably would not be able to do a fire on the mountain just because it's August and we're in the desert and everything's pretty dry.
Uh huh.
We're having a lot of fires and stuff around here now. So I thought there's no way. And plus, I'm on the ridge line virtually all the time. Even the Quakey camp is pretty much on the ridge,
Mm-hmm.
but you didn't have quite as much wind because you're in the trees. But there's really nowhere I was up there where there wasn't a pretty good wind. And so yeah, it was pretty much had to be the alcohol stove, the Trangia inside the Firebox Nano, and worked really well on Friday lunch. I was in a pretty barren spot really. There's virtually no wind protection there, so I piled up some pieces of juniper bark and some juniper boughs, kind of on one side to block a little bit of the wind on the stove, and
Uh huh.
it did fine. And when I got to Quakey camp and cooked there, I was kind of in a spot there. There really wasn't enough wind to worry about there, and the stove worked really well. It was hassle free, no problem at all. And and the nice thing I liked is all that is part of our one person cook set. So it kind of gave me a chance to try out the some of the things in the one person cook set right there in
Mm-hmm.
the conditions where you'd normally use them. But
Well, do you have any final words about the trek?
well, I'm glad it's done. No, it was a nice experience. Like I say, the more I think about it, I'll do something else like that at some point. And I'm already thinking about maybe trying something like that in the winter on snowshoes. I don't know. That'd
That
be
would definitely be fun.
and you'd have the opposite because you'd have the snow, the cold, and definitely you'd have the wind. So that would be a challenge that way.
That would be, but you'd have access to a lot of water, so you wouldn't have
Yeah,
to pack in
wouldn't
25
have
pounds
to.
of water.
Yeah. So, but I'd be making up that and and stuff to keep warm.
True.
But I don't know. Yeah, I'm glad I did. We're already looking at another trek or something. I don't know if you'll be able to go with me on that one or not. But
I'm
be a
hoping
little,
to.
be a little different style where we'll have plenty of water, plenty of lakes, and it'll be just kind of a fun experience on a different level. And we'll get to try out some other things we've got, some of that. That's part of why we want to do these game plan is to try to do a trek every month of some kind, and gives a chance to push ourselves personally, to try out some of our gear, try some concepts or ideas. And I mean, I really learned a lot. I really learned a lot from this trek, and you learn by doing, so that's why we do it. So anyway, yeah, I had a great time with it.
Well, and like we've talked about before, you can read about this stuff all you want in a book, but until you actually get out in the field and put it into practice, that's when you really get those lessons that you can't get out of a book.
Right. One of the big things is you have to learn about yourself.
Yeah.
It's not so much, hey, I know how to build a fire, I know how to build a shelter. A lot of it's how do you make yourself do what you need to do, or how do you keep yourself mentally good to go.
Yeah. Well, here at Wilderness Innovation, we've got 3 concepts that we push, and if you've seen some of our videos that correlate to one of these concepts, you put an image in the intro of the video to show, but those concepts are knowledge, skills, and gear. Would someone going out on a trek, I mean, how important is it to have those concepts nailed down before you take on any type of trek?
Yeah, but well, the knowledge is important because that's kind of what you have to have that to know what to do or to give you some idea. Some of the possibilities. I read a lot. I'm constantly reading, and old stuff, new stuff, and everything. It's a lot of ideas floating around in my head. And one of the fun things about when you get out on a trek like this is you get out there into some unknown thing. Well, something you read a year or 2 ago, some obscure thing might pop back into your head, and it's like, oh, I could do this, So it's good to have all that knowledge floating in your head, and then you get out on a trek or some kind of thing where, you're a little out of your comfort zone, to be honest, and it pushes you to try to pull some of that stuff out of your head and try to use it. So the knowledge part, you got to put it in there. If you have nothing in there, you don't have as much resources to draw from if you haven't tried to obtain the knowledge somehow.
Sure.
And then the skills comes to executing that. I mean, it's one thing to say, I can start a fire with a bow drill or a hand drill or flint and steel or fire piston or whatever, but it's another thing to do it out there under real world conditions, not in the garage, not in the backyard or the church or city hall parking lot or something.
Sure.
You're actually out there where the wind's blowing 40 miles an hour. It's like, okay. And like you experienced with me when we did that below zero deal out there at the pumpwood, you couldn't hardly keep your fingers from freezing up. I mean, when you got to do something like that, you learn something so valuable by learning those skills and being able to see what it takes, And so it's good to have the skill part of it we talk about. You need to know how to do it in good conditions so that you have an idea how to do it. Then when things are really tough, at least you already know how to do it.
Yeah.
And you practice it. So that makes it easier. Like you have to build like a lot of times, when we go, we wind up leaving late and setting up camp in the dark most of the time.
Yeah.
So you can tie your knots, you can put up your shelter, you can do a lot of your things pretty much in the dark. So that's kind of a good thing that you have the skills nailed down. And then the gear is just that you're going to take with you. You're going to take with you some of the appropriate gear. Like, it's cool to say, and sometimes we go a little more minimal than other times, but it's good to take the appropriate gear with you so you can make yourself comfortable, or even to know how to make your own gear from wherever you're at. So those 3 concepts are essential to have them all. A lot of people spend too much time just acquiring the knowledge part and don't develop the coordination, the skills, that sort of thing. And And other people, they spend all their time buying gearheads. They got every piece of gear in the world, but still may have not taken the time to practice with that gear to get to know it. They got 73 knives,
Yep.
but they haven't used any particular one because every one handles a little different. Like you get down to a single knife that's your favorite knife that you use all the time, you get used to how that thing performs and how it works. Then you get in a below zero environment or something where you're just shivering already, whatever, you're familiar enough with how that knife works that you can use it. So that's part of our concepts. That's part of why we do treks and a lot of other things we do is to practice the stuff that we're learning and try to be able to do it in all different kind of conditions.
All right. Well, thanks, Perry, for giving us the rundown on the trek. The second part of the trek should be uploaded here soon, but by the time this is out, I'm sure you've already watched it. So look forward to that. And it was good to be here and to pick your brain a little bit about the trek.
Very good. I enjoyed talking to you about it, Ben, and thanks for prodding my memory.
Absolutely.
Well, this is Perry and Ben with Wilderness Innovation, and hope you enjoyed this podcast. Look forward to doing some more for you on many other things. So take care, and as always, enjoy your time outdoors and have a great day.